Dunkirk's historic strand is the perfect stage for the GKA Freestyle season opener. Enthusiastic crowds lined the beach to take in all of the action and were glued to the final. Matteo Dorotini made it to his second successive final in Dunkirk, and the Italian opened strongly. But his challenge faded as the final wore on. Ultimately, he would have to be content with a fourth place finish. The German teenager Finn Flugel had a slow start, but he hit his stride in the chaotic surf. The 15-year-old threw down the gauntlet to his rivals, and his variety was strong enough to deliver him third place, and it showed he's improving fast enough to keep up with the best in the game right now. That meant Maxime Chabloz and Arthur Gilbert had a straight fight for the top two spots. The choppy North Sea offered a challenging playground for the pair to fight it out. Neither of them left anything on the table as they went toe-to-toe, searching for the win. It was clear, though, that Chabloz was starting to get his nose in front as the final progressed. But as it came down to the business end, Gilbert went for broke and pulled it out of the fire with the very last trick of the heat. It was enough to give the former world champion the edge and the win on home waters, to the delight of his adoring fans. So Gilbert took first, ahead of Chabloz in second, Finn Flugel in third, and Matteo Dorotini in fourth. For Chabloz, though, his second place was another bittersweet moment. On the women's side of the contest, Bruna Kajiya was on a roll, while Francesca Bagnoli was keen to mix it up with Kajiya and put on a show for the crowds who turned out for the women's final. The German teenager Kaya Lehmann was in her very first final, but it was impossible to tell from her performance. While the veteran Bruna Kajiya was all too familiar with the big stage. Francesca Bagnoli also knows what competition looks like when it starts to get serious. But despite a number of big tricks, she was slightly off her game, having to change her kite mid-final, which definitely unsettled her. Newcomer Lehmann, though, maintained the pressure with some big moves of her own to keep the scoreboard moving. In Dunkirk, Rita Arnaus was returning from an 18-month injury layoff, but it was clear she'd lost none of her competitive fire. The Spanish athlete kept Bruna Kajiya honest, and the Brazilian had to be at the very top of her game, but she didn't skip a beat, landing every single trick. She took the win in Dunkirk, and her boyfriend, world champion James Carrow, was the first with the congratulations. It is a sweet victory and the perfect way to get her title defence off to a flying start. So, confirmation of those results is Francesca Bagnoli in fourth, Kaya Lehmann in third, Rita Arnaus in second, and the Brazilian Bruna Kajiya in first.
It felt great. Today felt great. Like, I worked a lot and I trained a lot, and winning here for the second time, like last year one here, this year one here, it means a lot to me. You know, these conditions with strong wind and chop might be a little bit harder, but I was confident and I was like, okay, I trained a lot, you put in the work, trust it, and just go. So one of the things that I told myself before I went out was like, you're not going to crash any tricks on this final. You're going to land every single one of them. And that's what I did. And I mean, that feels so good, you know, to have a go, put the work into it, and don't shy away when the time comes. So very happy.
The men's final in Kaipe is a battle between youth and experience that puts Arthur Gilbert against Maxime Chabloz, Valentin Garat and Finn Flugel. The final is a nervy affair studded with crashes. Francis Garat tries to steady things with a big trick, but again struggles for consistency. The teenager Flugel keeps himself in the hunt with some huge moves. But his biggest trick, a massive combo that could have put him on top, goes awry, and his kite ends up in the restaurants that fringe the lagoon downwind. The combo that he did end up landing was not enough to bump him up, and he would have to settle for third. Again, the biggest battle is the head-to-head between Maxime Chabloz and Arthur Gilbert. Gilbert draws first blood with a high-scoring trick that gives him the edge. Chabloz's reply shortly after is emphatic. He lands a perfect 10-point trick that pushes him to the front. To the spectators and the judges though, it's clear Gilbert is just getting started. And he ups the ante with two massive moves that see him move into first place. Under pressure, Chabloz comes down to earth after his moment of perfection. He suffers two successive crashes that put him on the back foot. But with his closing two tricks, Chabloz regains his composure and it gives him the win by the tightest of margins. It is a career-first World Cup win. And for the Swiss athlete, it's clear it's as much a moment of relief as one of pure joy. In the tropical setting of the Brazilian lagoon, Bruna Kajiya is in her element on home waters, and she is roared on by legions of admirers. Kajiya marches up the order with assured riding that dispenses of rivals with an uncanny ease. For her opponents waiting in her path, it is an ominous prospect to see the Brazilian Queen of Freestyle on a rampage. Spain's Rita Arnaus, Francesca Bagnoli and Kaya Lehmann have the dubious honour of facing Kajiya in the final. Lehmann, appearing in her second successive final, lets the nerves get the better of her, and she begins with a series of crashes. Even a strong move late in the final fails to rescue her score. Bagnoli is locked in an epic tussle with Arnaus, and both know the stakes are high. The Italian opened slowly but wound it up as the heat unfolded. She closed it out with a series of powerful stomp tricks that the judges loved. Arnaus, meanwhile, got some good numbers on the board early with some powered, silky tricks. But she does all of the damage with her final trick that lands her highest score. It gives the Spaniard the edge over Bagnoli by a fraction of a point and earns her second place. Kajiya, who had been flawless in the previous rounds, had a shaky start to the final. But she found her rhythm and went on a tear with a series of huge moves that put her in a class of her own. By the time she lands a combo of link tricks, the Brazilian is out of sight and the home fans know it. It is Kajiya's second win of the season and it puts her on course for another world title.
I don't have words to describe how I feel. This is a dream for me. To compete in Coipa is a dream. To win at home, I'll tell you, there's nothing like it. Like winning in Brazil with the Brazilian people, I can only hope people can experience one day, because the feeling you get, the support you get, the energy, it's the pinnacle of sports, and I got to live it today. So yeah, I'm all smiles and very grateful.
The men's final in Qatar with Arthur Gilbert, Karim Kimo Mahmoud, Finn Flugel and Maxime Chabloz was one to savour, even in the fading breeze. There was a sense in the debrief that the occasion had maybe got to even the most composed athletes. The form Mahmoud had shown in earlier rounds deserted him, and even a solid trick at the close couldn't save his score. Gilbert fared better with a big early trick that put him on the right track, but then a series of crashes derailed his challenge, and with it went his hopes of another world title. He would finish in third. Even the usually rock-solid Chabloz was struggling for consistency. A dazzling opening trick was followed by a crash. But mid-heat he laid down a massive trick, landing the day's biggest score, and it launched him into second place. Chabloz had begun the day on equal points with Gilbert, but crucially ahead on the tie-break rule. And that meant Chabloz's second place ahead of the Frenchman would secure him a first emotional world title. Equally as highly charged was the women's final, with Claudia Leon going against Kaya Lehmann, Rita Arnaus and Bruna Kajiya. And the lighter breezes provided the ideal platform for the final shootout. Lehmann landed a strong move late in the heat, but the pressure was getting to her. She was out of contention by then, and the teenager would finish fourth. Returning from injury, Leon opened big, going to the moon with some solid tricks, but her consistency was missing, and she settled for third place. Arnaus found her groove and put together a steady heat. And while it lacked any real fireworks, the Spaniard's opening trick set the tone for a solid outing. That would see her finish in second place in Qatar. With 3 impressive runners-up finishes after a long injury break, Arnaus ends 2024 in second place overall. But Kajiya is in a league of her own. The Brazilian opens with a big trick and settles into her task. A high-scoring combo of linked moves mid-final stretches her lead, while the closing trick seals her win, making it a clean sweep for the season, and it delivers Kajiya back-to-back world titles that take her total to a remarkable 5.
Especially after this year, like this year was a special year for me where I feel like I was on top of my game throughout the whole year. I got 3 firsts, and that's not usually very common, so it means a lot because it shows my work and dedication. I really did a lot of preparation to be here, and to get this 5th world title, it was always something I knew deep inside me I had it, and I would tell people, and you know, they don't believe it until they see it. They'll be like, yeah, you know. So I think it's really cool. It opens people's minds. It shows potential to, you know, achieve your goals. And yes, I tend to believe my gut feeling, and it brought me here, so very, very happy.
The GKA Freestyle Kite World Champions have been crowned for another year. Once again, Fuwairit and its crystal clear lagoon provided a perfect stage to close out the GKA Freestyle year that began in France and moved to Brazil. Bruna Kajiya's reign as the Qatar Airways GKA Freestyle Kite World Champion continued for another year, while Maxime Chabloz got his hands on the crown for the very first time. Next year, the GKA will venture to new locations on a globe-trotting world tour. New faces will emerge and command the limelight. Join us again to see where the journey takes us.